Kalyan, can we start? Yeah, we are already late by 5 minutes. I'm used to I'm used to being on time online, but okay. Oh God, that's why I also couldn't do it. That I could only join through link. Okay, no problem. So I'll mute myself until you ask me to unmute. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, good morning, all my dear friends on Facebook Live. I'm very happy coming back like almost after a month live on Facebook. I'm seeing all the friends Prashant, Lakshmi, Pavan Pachigola, Aryan Gajweli, Kumresan, Loknathan, Natesan Dwivedi, all known Ashok Kumar, very good morning. Hemant Reddy Garu, great, you are all my Facebook Live friends. I'm seeing you after a long time, after a month almost. So good to see you all. In fact, I tried keeping live streaming from Zoom, but somehow technically they didn't keep that option. So that's why I'm again back to my original method of using my phone camera and doing FB live. Suraj Vishwa Kamlakar Garu, good morning. Very nice seeing you here. Yeah, Rohit Potu, Suraj Vishwakarma, welcome you all for this lecture. But today it's a long lecture, like almost I'll be going for 1.5 hour lecture with 210 slides. My favorite topic, Vinith Reddy, welcome. So they have, in fact, they are slightly delayed due to some technical issue. Now we'll be starting in another 2-3 minutes. Once they say go ahead, I will start my actual lecture. So Tirupati, June, welcome you all. I hope you are getting transmission. Yeah. Krishna Sakari, Mohammad Rafi, good morning. Gopi Dasari, good morning to you all. Saurabh Mishra, yeah. The introduction is going on. Introduction for me by the VBIT college. So give me 2 more minutes for me to start my lecture. So I'm sure all of you don't need my introduction. Hi Subhash, Kalai Vanakkam. Kalai Vanakkam. Yeah, I'll start my lecture in 2 minutes. Can you hear to me now? Now my introduction is going on in Zoom. I could not get the live stream of the Zoom. That's why I'm silent. I'm hearing to their introduction about me. Thank you. Thank you all. Good morning. Yeah, good morning, Krishna Rao garu, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Krishna Rao garu. Thank you, Kalyan. And thank you, Monica, for excellent introduction. So should we start? Okay. Good morning to all the distinguished participants. I have seen the list of participants. All of you are doing great service by being academicians and researchers. I always tell the noblest people are those who teach tirelessly and without much of expectations in return. And my guru also told me, so I am very happy to be part of this faculty development program. Excellent topic, that is performance of engineering structures under extreme loading. But I'll be covering only performance of engineered structures under design loading. So there's a slight difference, subtle difference actually. I always call structures engineered. In fact, yesterday I got some report of a structure which was, though engineers worked, but I call it unengineered. So if any structure that doesn't satisfy design loading is unengineered. Extreme loading probably is beyond design loading. That's how I understand. Otherwise, any design loading is design loading. There is no extremity in it. So if we have to design for a wind speed, we call it survival wind speed and serviceable wind speed, but never extreme wind speed. So we have documented the loads as per the portal provisions. So I'll not go much into it now. So today's my topic is a topic very close to my heart, that is structural systems of high-rise structures. So we'll start the topic. We are already late by 15 minutes. I'm sorry for that, but anyway, we'll try to cover up that time in my speed. So the high-rise structures, the contents or overview of my topic is I'll cover about high-rise structures, different types, and need of high-rise and high-rise structural systems, and dynamic analysis and planning and management, construction techniques of high-rise building, and safety in high-rise buildings, and finally the projects done by our company Satyavani Projects. So what are all high-rise structures actually? As per the National Building Code, any structure beyond 15 meters is treated as a high-rise structure. But technically speaking or structurally speaking, high-rise structures are the ones whose slenderness is very high. So in that case, the behavior between the normal structure and the high-rise or tall structure differs actually. So in the high-rise structures, my maximum experience is in lattice towers in high-rise. I have done up to 213 meter tall tower for transmission. We have done FM towers of height to 173 meters, microwave towers of 100 meters, and lighting towers and lighting masts, and security towers. Security tower means, ISRO, Sriharikota rocket launch station. They need 120 meter tall tower, putting the earthing wires, that is to prevent lightning attack on the rocket launch stations. And similarly, transmission towers, power transmission. These are all the tall high-rise structures. And masts. We also have masts or poles which are used for both transmission and lighting. And very many people know about chimneys. Tall chimneys are also coming under high-rise structures. Hybrid towers. That means we had in one time about 30 years back series of high-rise TV towers which are hybrid, like concrete shaft and then steel mast, steel lattice towers on the top for Doordarshan TV transmission. And cooling towers, which are normally about 100 meters, hyperbolic paraboloid shells are also coming under high-rise. Normally they will be about 100 meters tall. And then elevated storage reservoirs, the water tanks, also come under high-rise structures. And finally the buildings. We are seeing a lot of competition among countries about the skyscrapers, tallest building. And as of now, the tallest building that stands is Burj Khalifa, as all of we know. Towards the end of my topic, I also did a case study comparison of various structural systems which I'll be covering as part of my lecture. I didn't mention it in the overview, but I have added in the today morning that comparison also. So I'll be showing some of the pictures of these high-rise structures which we have done. Very interesting stories behind them, but I'll not go into all those details. So we have done for almost all communication towers in the country. About whatever tower you see, one out of every two towers is designed by us. So that is my background. So here you can see FM tower, communication tower, and the police communication towers and the trilons. These are all the towers which we have done, designed and managed these things. And also this masts you are seeing, we have done it in New Zealand, and FM tower of 100 meters in Barmer in Rajasthan, and transmission towers of different up to 765 kVA, And then microwave towers backbone we have done in India. So this is a highlight mast. This is a real challenging structure analysis. You can see the heavy loading on the top and such a slender tall structure which we see in almost every cities nowadays apart from floodlight towers. So these are all the towers which we do and masts we design which come under tall and high-rise structures. And this is a closer view of that Barmer tower. You can imagine the erection and perfection in the design and erection of that kind of structures. And this is another communication tower which we have designed for backbone in Andhra Pradesh for Idea Cellular from Vizag to Hyderabad. And these are all guide masts also. You will have the tall structure, self-supporting and guide mast. This is the guide tower which is used in mostly in police communication towers. And we have these poles which we have designed up to 40-meter concrete poles for communication, monopole, which can be erected in 2 days' time. So that kind of structures also, in terms of buildability and cost effectiveness, they come. But the only thing is delivery-wise, the number of poles that are required per month was so huge, we didn't have the vendors. And this is another mast communication tower being tested with the loads, actually prototype testing. This is another biggest challenge. This is a challenge actually. And then we have these communication towers, multi-circuit tower being tested. You can see the loads being applied. The biggest challenge for a structural engineer in high-rise structures is transmission actually. Imagine a 50-meter tall tower being subjected to hundreds of tons of load on this. And you know the biggest constraint in this is it should not fail within 6% additional load beyond that. Because when we talk about extreme loading, this is the case of extreme loading actually. So the extreme loading means the condition of client or transmission towers is they should survive till destruction. So we test these towers till destruction. So when we test these towers till destruction, they should not survive beyond 20% over and above the design load. So that is the challenge. So we have to be very accurate, 1.06 overload factor to 1.2. Only 14% margin we have to design the structures. If I design for lesser capacity, it will fail. If I design for higher capacity, my design is rejected. So this is the challenge in high-rise structures, really interesting. And so your design has to be accurate, your materials have to be accurate quality, and then fabrication, galvanizing, erection, and then detailing of the structure. So this is the challenge really. And these are the hybrid towers. This is in Rameshwaram. You can see this TV tower. On top you have this lattice tower. Very interesting, but nowadays this has got lost the relevance after satellite communications have come into TV transmission. Otherwise, in a decade, like 2 decades, 1970 to 3 decades up to 2000, these towers were transmitting the TV signals. And we have these windmill towers also coming under high-rise structures. So you will see this picture in Kanyakumari, very huge wind farms, up to 1000 megawatts of power being generated through these windmills. And chimneys, tall chimneys. There are tall chimneys mainly in power projects and this kind of process industries. So chimney design also comes under high-rise structure. So construction design and construction methods are a challenge in this. And the elevated storage reservoirs. We do this design of different types of elevated storage water tank, and so these are all coming under various structural systems. We can see the biggest challenge in elevated storage reservoirs is seismic resistant design. So we have to be very careful in evolving the structural systems, and that's why nowadays we are seeing this funnel type and the shaft type of the staging as against column and beam type of staging for these elevated storage reservoirs. So this is another type which we have designed. You have the dome, you have the conical shell, and then we have the cylindrical shell. All these structural systems and detailing very interesting structure we have done in Chiralas coastal region. And these are all the closer view of these structures. When we want to see the structural system, these are the ones where the detailing and the connection details are very important. We have to design every joint and detail those joints, and we have to see that the detail is accurate till erection is done. So these are all some of the photographs. The base connection is very important. You can see the bracing connection and a splice connection here, and then base plate with the gussets and these check nuts. And this is another interesting pylon structure supporting the cable-stayed bridges. So in bridges also we have these structures, very high-rise structures and structural systems. We have very interesting, and aesthetics come into play in bridges. So this is finally the Santiago Calatrava Bridge, very popular pylon, where real challenge is taken, actually created, challenge is created. In fact, you don't need all that, but for the aesthetics, he has designed. I am a lover of Santiago Calatrava in terms of structural system, because ribs, there is no structure. There is a commonality in any type of structure, whether it is an auditorium, whether it is a high-rise building, whether it is a bridge. He brings in the common elements of the concrete ribs in this. So that's why I've chosen to show this high-rise structure also in my lecture. Now, we are getting into the core of the topic, that is high-rise buildings. High-rise buildings are very tall structures. As of now, we have 828 meter tall building, Burj Khalifa. And the buildings having height more than or equal to 15 meters are coming under high-rise as per National Building Code 2016. Because of the safety reasons, they defined these high-rise structures. And we have this high-rise structures code also, IS 16700 and 2017. Mainly there are a lot of debates going on the applicability and implementation of this IS 16700. That's why I wanted to share some of the important points of this 16700. The code is based on prescriptive approach. This is in the preamble, it is written, covering the design aspects of tall building, and the standard is applicable only for buildings that house less than 20,000 or fewer people. So, and also this code covers the buildings of height greater than 50 meters and less than 250 meters. So this is the code applicability, the scope of the code you can see. And the standard addresses structural wall systems and moment resting frames, and structural wall and moment resting frame combination. And we have flat slab floor systems with the perimeter moment resting frames, and the structural wall frame tube systems and tube in tube system, frame tube system, and hybrid system of all this. And we have multiple tube, that is bundled tube, that is actually, and any of the above with the traditional framing system, for example trusses, belt trusses and brace frame, are also covered under this code 16700. So the general requirements are defined regarding the lateral drift. Mainly important point in high-rise structures is the lateral drift. The lateral drift for buildings it is different, and other structures it is different. Let us please note. And height by 500 and for unfactored load, and height by 250 for factored load, and height limitations of different structural systems, whatever are mentioned before, are for 50 meters to 250 meters, and the story height by 250, that is the relative drift, is HI by 250 for the factored earthquake loading. So these are all the limitations. And story stiffness variation between two subsequent floors should not be more than 70, less than 70% actually, relative stiffness. And density of the buildings is defined modes of vibration, that is basically the natural period and vibration, fundamental vibration torsion in vibration shall not exceed 0.9 times the smaller of the natural periods, and floor systems and all floor slabs shall be cast in situ. For precast floors, minimum screed of, that is for diaphragm action, it specifies. And of course in precast anyway we have these joints, and for construction requirements also we will be providing the screed of 75 mm. And mainly most of the provisions of this code will be applicable to seismic zones 3, 4 and 5. That means almost 70%, 60% of our country is under zones 3, 4 and 5. And minimum grade of concrete for these high-rise structures shall be M30. So wind and seismic loads, load combinations and acceptable serviceability criteria for lateral accelerations all are defined in this code, and structural design aspects for various applicable structural systems and issues to be considered in design of foundation, and systems needed for structural health monitoring. This is very, very important when we go for high-rise, because of the safety of the people involved in the high-rise structures. We have to have the structural monitoring devices. In fact, Pradeep Ramancharla of IIIT is leading in this. He has almost installed 10,000 for 10,000 buildings the structural health monitoring devices, that is sensors in the structures. In fact, one of my building also he has installed, so that they will be getting monitoring the any unusual activity in the building, so that we can raise alert for the inmates of the building, because safety of the people is very important in the buildings. So let us go into these high-rise different structural systems for the buildings, which is very interesting. And so these are some of the photographs in our country of the high-rise structures. We have 33 floors, we have 60 floors in Mumbai. Mostly these high-rise buildings are used for residential, hotel and office buildings because of the cost of the land. And now we are seeing the most interesting structure in the world, and it is I like this. I would have visited 4 or 5 times during construction itself, this Burj Khalifa, and it's amazing, and it is the best structural system I could come across, because it is the tallest structure and most efficient structural system, and it is a stunning work of art also. That is the look and appearance. It looks most healthy structure, and it is an incomparable feat of engineering. That's how we will say. And in concept and commissioning, Khalifa has no peer so far. Because it is exactly completed in 3.5 years of time. I have visited in 2004 October this structure. There people are doing the foundation piling, 3 meters dia or 2 meter dia piles up to depth of 60 meters. And then by the time 2007 October, I visited this site, and 166th floor is under construction in 3 years exactly. And beautiful part of this structure is, I keep telling, the structural engineer was not given the actual height at the time of conceptualizing this structure. They have only told it is 500 meters. So he has this is from the words of the designer Bill Baker, who is my living god actually. Bill Baker himself explained this. He was given only 500 meters height at the time of design. They have completed the design of foundations, and the foundation work commenced. At that time only they have revealed the actual height of the building as 828 meters or 829.8 meters. Then how do you consider? So, the beautiful application of wind roses, the direction of the wind on the structure. So he has used the drag coefficient very effectively by rotating the structure by 60 degrees, by studying the windrose diagram of this location. And they have done the wind tunnel studies after rotating, and found that the designed foundation almost holds good for that loading. That is the beauty of engineering actually. So it is one of the best structures. That's why I say when I went to the basement of this structure, I have seen only 500 thick columns. Whereas I already did one building of 26 storied in which my column sizes were a bit larger than that. Of course, there are many factors in that, but still, when I saw that, I was flabbergasted. And I said, the designer of this structure is really a god who could optimize the structural system to that great extent. And now we see so many high-rise structures in the world. This is the South Beach development in Singapore, to have been completed in 2016, and 280 meter long, and the canopy floats. There are so many beautiful stories for every structure, high-rise buildings actually. There is where for every high-rise building there is a story, and I keep attending Structural Engineers World Congress every 2 years, in which almost all these structures designers have presented their design philosophies behind these. It's very interesting to know that. And this is the signature tower in Jakarta, which is 638 meter tall, almost 5th tallest structure in the world. I'm just showing the photographs of these structures. I'll discuss about various structural systems as we move forward. And this is another tall structure in Singapore, Tanjung Pagar Center, and this is 250 meter tall in Philippines. The beauty here is the curtain wall facade and the corners peeling off look, that you will feel the structure is changing its base size in the facade basically. But the structural system is a very effective thing. And this is the Shanghai Tower. This is another beautiful concept of reducing the wind effect by giving this opening, which is causing the turbulence effect and reduces the lateral drift actually because of that opening, and also it gives you aesthetic appearance. So that is the beauty of it. And then need of high-rise buildings. So let us discuss the need of these high-rise buildings, because some of the urban areas in Delhi particularly, we see that the land costs have gone up to 1 million rupees per square yard, or 500 crores per acre. That kind of land prices when you have in Mumbai also, we have square feet of building being sold at 30,000 rupees, in which case the land component is very high in that, whereas the construction cost component is about 5,000 to 6,000 rupees. So it is always worth increasing the number of floors and increasing the FSI wherever the land prices are very high. That's why we need to go for high-rise buildings in this fast pace of urbanization. And whenever we talk about these structural systems for high-rise structures particularly, every force component becomes predominant. Whether you call it tension or you call it compression, you have the shear in both the directions, or torsional movements and actual flexural movements. So we have to be very clear about the behavior of these structures when we are designing the high-rise structures. So the types of interior structural systems in high-rise buildings. So we divide the structural systems into two categories. One is interior and the other is outer or peripheral things. So we have shear truss systems, we have the shear wall systems, and we have the core supported outrigger system, and we have combination of this. These are all the interior structural systems. And then so we can see as the height increases, the comparison of different interior structural systems. So here you can see the braced hinged frames. Here we can see the rigid frame as we cross this 20 meters and beyond. And rigid frames in steel as we cross 30 meters. And we have concrete shear walls beyond 30 meters. Also, it is required shear wall. And then we have braced rigid frames. In place of shear wall, we can have bracings also. So we can have these braced rigid frames in addition to shear wall. And we have the concrete shear wall with the steel rigid frames. And then we have the concrete shear wall with the concrete frame, that is tubed frames. Beyond 30 floors, that means about 100 meters and above, we will be going for these tubed frames. And beyond 100 meters and above, there will be multiple combination of multiple system. And here you can see the outrigger system. So the shear trusses are laterally supported by vertical steel trusses. That means we have the vertical loading taken by the normal column beam system, and we have these shear trusses within that vertical frames to be supported by these steel trusses. And we have these lateral loads primarily through axial stiffness of the members. That means we'll take moment into tension compression couple. And we have the concentric braced frames and eccentric braced frames, so depending on the facade or form of the structure. And they're all treated as vertical cantilever. That means we design the cantilever, so in cantilever you have the tension and compression and shear, simple. So we design that, and connecting beam forces the walls to act as a single unit. The walls in the structure in the cantilever model, where it will act as a deep beam, and a deep beam we all know is primarily a shear structure. So we also have these coupled shear walls. When we have the multiple shear walls, we will be having the beams that will make these shear walls act as a single beam, like a beam with web openings. It will behave like that. So we have this shear wall system with the base isolation primarily when it falls under seismic high seismic zones. So we have these cross bracings for transfer of the shear, and we have the shear wall, and we have the shear core in the central. This is a typical system, and we have this base isolation at the base to reduce the impact of the earthquake energy, to absorb the earthquake energy at the base level itself. And these are the real pictures of these projects, like where we use the shear wall, which has become very popular nowadays. Of course, here you can see the transverse slab, which I am totally against. We have to insist on taking the shear walls down. Otherwise, the very purpose of the shear wall will be lost, and there will be a lot of inefficiency in the transfer of force through these transverse slabs, and the cost will become almost double in the structural cost just because of this transverse slab. So shear wall concept in any structural system composed of braced panels to counter the effects of lateral loads acting on the structure. And shear walls are designed to resist the axial loads as well as the lateral loads. Mainly the lateral loads predominantly are by earthquake and wind. And the walls are structurally integrated with the roof slab. So we have very good efficiency in terms of diaphragm action, and walls transferring the shear, diaphragm distributing the shear. So the torsional forces are minimized in these shear wall constructions, or in other words, people call it rigid monolithic construction. So this is very efficient up to number of floors of 20 floors actually. This shear wall system with the slab without beams and column is very efficient. Only thing is we have to plan the parking without increasing the spans in the basement, so that the structural system is efficient. Normally the planners tend to increase the span for the parking, but let us not much worry about this parking. It is easier to increase the floor height rather than increasing the number of car parks by removing the wall. We have to, any structural engineer has to convince the planners and developers about this point. So the shear walls, if they are not integrated properly, what will happen is this actually, earthquake resistant design. So these are all the points marked, you can see in the shear walls where the connections are not properly integrated with the wall, between the frame and wall. So the classification of shear walls. So we have this simple rectangular type shear wall which continues totally, and we have these coupled shear walls where we have the two shear walls joined with beams, and we have the rigid frame type of shear frame and the core type shear frame. And this is the column supported shear wall. This is very bad actually. I don't support this, but still when we are forced to use it, we should go for this column supported shear wall. And these are the frames, simple rigid frames. So this is the shear wall and frame connected to shear wall, and we have the slab in diaphragm action. So this is a typical structural system up to 30 meters, that means up to 10 floors. This system is good enough. A shear core and a frame structure supporting the shear core. And rigid frames is a normal framed structures with deep beams and columns. So rigid, it becomes a rigid frame action with a rigid joint. It can be used up to 10 to 35 stories, as I said. So these are all some of the oldest structures constructed using these rigid frames. This is all black and white I could get, and this is a Reliance building, and these are some of the high-rise structures without much of technology actually. You know, Empire State Building, they have done in those days, in 1930s, they have done the 3 floors in one go, concreting. So that kind of normal concrete they have done, and these are all the high-rise structural frames, braced frames you can see, and these are the Seagram's building in New York, which has the braced frame with rigid columns and beams. And this is also a rigid frame in Chicago, Shore Drive Apartments. So how does the interaction between shear wall and frame behavior happens? So this is the shear wall interaction, you can see. So Park and Powell explains this phenomenon very well in the reinforced concrete structures by Park and Powell. So here you can see, if it is a pure frame, this is how it will deform. If it is a pure shear wall, this is how it will deform. So if you combine these two, the resultant behavior is like this. So they complement the forces and they will share the forces this way. So we can design this shear wall by taking these complementary forces. And belt trusses are also used to distribute. So this is the outrigger system. The concept of outrigger is, you can see how the moment is reduced because of the outrigger. So the moment in core with outrigger bracing is reduced suddenly due to this outrigger diaphragm that is resisting the moment, rigidity that is introduced to resist the moment, you know. And best example for this outrigger is Taipei. You know, in this Taipei Tower, it's a beautiful form you can see, but it is also a meaningful structural system. In this, up to 60 meters, here you can see at the bottom, up to 60 meters height, you have the super columns. So, and then it will start the outrigger here. So super columns and super frames are some of the very efficient structural systems in terms of constructability and the design. I'll explain briefly as we move forward. Sorry. Now, exterior structures. We have covered the interior structures in the buildings. Normally, with interior structures, we can design up to 30 floors, as I said. Now, these are all exterior structures. That means in this exterior structure, we will tackle the entire lateral load by using these exterior structures, like frame tube, brace tube, bundle tube, tube in tube, diagrid system, and a space truss system, super frame system, and exoskeleton systems. And as we now, the latest is buttressed core, that is Burj Khalifa buttressed core system. So we can see these exterior structural systems. I'll move this for me to able to read. Yeah. So here these are the structural systems. So concrete tubed frames up to 60 meters. You can go for individual tubed frame up to 60 meter, and you can go for steel tubed frame up to 80 meter. And this is a tube in tube. Also you can use instead of steel frame. Concrete tube in tube up to 80 meters. And then we have this concrete brace tube. That means exterior frame, instead of whenever we exhaust the size of the column and size of the beam, we will go for these braced tubes. And we have a steel braced tube here, and it is a steel diagrid. This is a diagrid up to 100 meters. You can go for a diagrid. And then we have the exoskeleton, and then we have the bundled tube. This is a bundled tube is Chicago Sears Towers, and then we have the concrete bundled tube. Here you can see the structural form, and then we have the steel brace tube interior columns. So this is the we will have the columns interior, but exterior we have this like a truss brace tube. And we have this space truss, that is Bank of China is the best example for this space truss concept. And then we have this super frame. Super frame was the structural system adopted in World Trade Center. So these are all the exterior structures beyond 100 meters also. So I'll be showing you the photographs or pictures of these systems. So we have this building closely spaced columns, that is frame tube, how it looks. In fact, when I joined my post graduation, my colleague was doing research on this frame tubes actually. So I used to interestingly follow this work, and it is very efficient up to 60 floors, but beyond 60 floors it is not efficient. Because in these frame tubes, like we have these hollow sections in steel, which will have the shear lag, and even the angles, we have the shear lag in open angles. So same way in these tube frames, we have the shear lag effect. This is the theoretical value what we calculate, but this dotted is the actual value. So we have to take care of this shear lag effect in these tubes, because corner stress concentration will be there in the corners. So this will have to be taken care when we design these frame tubes. On center, this is another example of a frame tube actually. And then brace tube. Stiffen the widely spaced columns. If we need columns to be spaced a little far apart, then we have to go for bracings, because the shear resistance cannot be done by just column and beam joints, rigid joint. So this is the load path in brace tubes. You can see this is a theoretical thing. So John Hannock Center is a good example of brace tubes. So here you can see the column spaced apart and bracings tackling the shear. Next important is the bundled tube. So we can see the beauty of this bundled tube. Of course, all of us know this is a concept derived by Fazlur Khan from Bangladesh, who has taken inspiration from the bamboo trees. We never see bamboo standalone actually. One bamboo you never see. It is always bunch of bamboos. In fact, nature teaches us a lot of structural system. I will not go into that. I have so many concepts on nature giving us these concepts, but I'll confine to this bamboo thing. So he has taken the inspiration from the bamboo, and here the staggered termination in the spiral mode of this bundle tube, because the tubes support the tubes. So this bundle tube also will reduce the effect of wind on this structure because of the variation. In the words of William Baker, designer of Burj Khalifa, he says, we confuse the wind. That is, we know we have these wind streaks and all in the chimneys that we provide, which will cause the turbulence. So for a common man to understand, structural engineer confuses the load. I always take the example of boxing. So when the opponent he tries to hit us, we will try to escape. We confuse the opponent. So same way, wind also we confuse by giving this staggered spiral shape termination of these bundles actually. So that we can see in the 50 floors, 66 floors, how we can add these bundles 90 floors, 108 floors. So this is the final shape. So you can see in different termination of these bundles that will cause the wind turbulence and reduce the effect of wind on the structures. So this is the concept of bundle tube. As we go to the top, there are only two tubes, and the tube is buttressing the core actually. That is how, and you can see the force diagram in this also. So Sears Towers, for quite long time, this was the tallest building in Chicago, a very beautiful structure, and this bundling and staggered termination of these towers itself breaks the monotony of the mass of the structure, and hence it has become very popular concept. The floor diaphragm in tube, the floor diaphragm connects the inner core to the outer core, and so it behaves as a tube in tube, because the inner core always makes sense in high rise, because the central core takes the ducts, fire ducts, electrical duct, and we have the elevators. Transportation always is better to be in the central core. So naturally that forms a core, the central core, and this outer tube will take care of the is very efficient in terms of lateral load resistance, whether it is shear or flexure, and then inner core is good for functionality, but you can utilize the stiffness of the inner core also by connecting this outer core and inner core. So that is the structural system. So this is the West Madison Street building in Chicago, 207 meters. This is a tube-in-tube system. So this is how the tube-in-tube can be. The outer tube connected to inner tube by these diaphragms, It is like a beam with stirrups. You have the tension reinforcement, compression reinforcement, and the stirrups connecting the central core of concrete. That is how analogy we can draw. And diagrid system, most popular, it has become popular in Amravati. They have tried adopting this diagrid system for secretariat, tallest secretariat as proclaimed. And of course, this didn't go through. Personally, as an engineer, I am opponent of adopting this system for this 50-storied building, this diagrid. But this is already used for cyber texture egg building. The diagrid. This is very effectively adopted diagrid actually. So I'm not showing that Amravati diagrid actually. So superframe now. Superframe is composed of mega columns or super columns I always call, and then comprising of braced frames of large dimensions at building corners. That is to basically handle the shear lag in the corners. So this is, now you can't see this picture. World Trade Center, a tragedy. People have destroyed this, but this is a beautiful concept in terms of super frame actually. You can see the picture, another small building in between. This is the beauty of the picture in this. That's why I like this picture. Next is the space truss. It is a modified brace tube with the diagonals connecting the exterior to interior. So we are connecting the interior core by using the diagonals to the exterior frame and the interior core. So this is the beautiful example of space truss we adopted in Bank of China. So this is, you can see our simple truss adapted for lateral load resistance. And one thing you should see in all these things, the structure itself becomes the aesthetic feature actually. That is the beauty of it. So structural engineer play a great role in aesthetics also, in selecting the structural system. Next is the exoskeleton. The lateral load resisting systems are placed outside the building, lines away from the facade even. So here you can see the exoskeleton. It's a hotel structure. So we are, it is like packaging, you know. You see the packaging box where they use the planks for covering, and then they will brace with the metal strips. So the same system. The building is encased in a exoskeleton structure outside. So it has no role to play in the building function, but it resists, it protects the structure from the lateral loads. And this is the buttressed core. I love this concept. I want to spend time on this. Please try to listen to me. You know, the most rigid structural shape in the words of Will Baker is hexagon actually. Hexagon has got the best resistance in terms of lateral loads, you know. So he has used the hexagon, not equal sided hexagon, but it is the shape of hexagon. You can see here. So this is the 6 faces of this central core. And then most efficient flexural element is I section, you know. That is, we have 2 flanges for tension and compression, and we have the web connecting these flanges. So what he has done is, he has buttressed this rigid core of hexagon shape. You can see the braced diaphragm here, braced diaphragm action. This is in this core. And then he has used the I shape here, so that this is the I buttressing this core, and this is another I. Why this intermediate stiffening of this I? You know, web stiffeners we have. So you have these web stiffeners in this, and then the lateral load is resisted by these I sections, and the central core takes care of the shear, and also this web takes care of the shear, and it is the most efficient structural system. In fact, SOM got this job because of this concept, and most efficient concept in terms of structural system. And you see this I section becomes smaller as you go 30 floors, and but further smaller here as you move 30 floors, and next here and next here, like that. So you will have a spiral type termination of these floors, and the reduction of the I section as it is required. That's why you see the tapered section of this building. And this is the most efficient structure, the buttressed core. So I am really, I've become emotional seeing this structural system, and it has become the really most efficient structure. Yeah, this is Khalifa only. I'm explaining about Khalifa only. It's not an imaginary structure. So this is the beautiful structure standing in the world. And you can see these terminated floors, and they also act as the refuse floors, you know, refuse for fire. So you people can be evacuated at these points, and at the same time you will see this spiral shaped termination of these floors like this. It goes like a spiral. So this is the beautiful structure and the best of the structural systems. I really like, I wait for an opportunity to design this kind of structure. So next is the analysis for these high-rise structures. A very important point is dynamic analysis and secondary P delta effect analysis to be done. And the wind is essentially the large-scale horizontal movement. When we go for these high-rise structures, wind becomes very predominant actually, however small it may be, even in Dubai. Dubai, the wind speed is much lesser compared to our Indian, any city actually, maybe Bangalore. comparable to Bangalore. But still, when we go to that high rise, the wind speeds, the normal wind speed, which is 30 meters per second at the lower level, will go up to 60 meters per second as you go to the top. So we have to design for these wind loads, and we have to do the dynamic analysis even for the wind loads. And Dubai, for Burj Khalifa, most of the tall structures are considered in less earthquake prone zones actually. Otherwise it becomes very uneconomical. Otherwise we have to go for total base isolation and 5 types of damping systems. Like Japan, you have these damping bracings, pneumatic bracings, mass dampers, tune dampers, all types of dampers we have to use in these tall buildings, particularly when they have to be constructed in earthquake prone zones. So they have to become intelligent. There are controller actuated dampers also. Like you can feed the accelerograms of these seismic accelerograms of different earthquakes and make a controller that will be used for actuating the dampers actually. So it's very important handling the wind and earthquake with intelligent systems. Now the technology has advanced so much, we can minimize the dynamic effects on this structure by incorporating these things. So here you can see the wind effects, how it behaves, and then shear, movement and deflection, effect of wind on tall structures. This is how you can see. And wind effects on structures can be classified into static and dynamic. And we have this static wind effect primarily causing elastic bending and twisting of the structure. If there is any eccentricity, there will be twisting of the structure. And dynamic for tall, long span and slender structures, the dynamic analysis like h by 10 is the limit. H by 5 is the limit for static analysis for the winds. So the moment we cross across, we must do the dynamic analysis for such structures. And the gust, the most of the buildings we take 10 seconds gust. Whatever K2 factors are given is without gust effects. So when we go for dynamic analysis, we can consider the hourly mean wind speed, that is reference wind speed we can take, and we can design for using the gust factor, which can be calculated considering the natural frequency of the structure. So these are the forces, how the wind speed varies. You can see the diagram, and so these are the pressures, lateral. So there are 6 types of vibrations. So for all that we have this coefficient when we do the dynamic analysis. So wind tunnel studies are compulsory for these high-rise structures. Any structure beyond 60 meters, I would say, it is always good to go for wind tunnel studies, even for facade design or for the structural design. So this is a typical wind tunnel photograph for Burj Khalifa when they have done. So these are all the obstructions, and you can see the modeling of the structure location to get the realistic forces, and the structure theoretical coefficients are checked with this practical coefficient. And towers, when we design, so this is a horizontal configuration of the tower. You can see when we design these towers also, we have wind tunnel studies done for special towers like river crossing tower. This is a 80-meter tall tower. And this is the, when we model the wind tunnel studies, this is how the actual behavior of the wind. So one can see the flow of wind, how it affects the wind forces, and also by seeing this you can understand the importance of wind tunnel study, and also importance of creating the turbulence to reduce the passive coefficients. The passive wind coefficients that are on the leeward side of the structure. And this is when we have 2-3 buildings, tall buildings, when we are designing, also it's very important. You can see the turbulence that is caused between the buildings, and here you can see the passive wind force that happens, vacuum formed beyond this. So it's very important to study in all the directions the wind flow in such tall buildings, you know. So this is multiple, like New York, Wall Street, Times Square kind of areas. We have to have this kind of wind tunnel studies, so you will get the realistic picture. So it's not just enough to calculate the coefficients of our own building. We have to study the effect of a tall building. You can see the tunnel effect here. So the facade on this building, you can see what will happen, you know. So this kind of wind tunnel studies will help us in estimating the realistic forces, even by considering the adjoining structures. So these are typical wind tunnel experiments on the facades also, open facades. So these are all done. And earthquake, we have these shake table studies. Of course, we cannot do any prototype. They're all scaled models for earthquake. We have CPRI and SCRC and some of the research centers having this shake table tests to study the effect of wind, particularly effect of base isolation also can be studied on for earthquake prone areas where we intend to design these high-rise structures. So dynamic actions due to wind and earthquake, we have to consider earthquake forces. The design is shear design basically. Earthquake will be primarily shear because it is a sudden force. Sudden force, there is no time for flexure actually. By the time the flexural force comes, the earthquake is gone. So we have to resist by shear primarily. So the earthquake force design is primarily a shear. That's why we calculate the base shear and the story shear in earthquake, even in dynamic conditions. So this is the infill frame effect. You can see the effect of earthquake, and this is the accelerogram that we have, and we have to take, we can do the with the seismic coefficient method up to even 30 meters if the base size dimension is almost like h by 5, between h by 5 to h by 10 also. And the inertial forces and acceleration are important, and story drift has to be considered in the analysis, and the inter-story drift of 0.1 indicates that roof is displaced 1 foot for a 10-foot this one. So it's very high, so we have to take care of this story drift and minimize the story drift because it affects the joinery, it affects the infills if we are considering the infill. So the design of infill depends on this story drift also. And the P delta effect, the secondary effects of these tall buildings is very important in the analysis. So we have to go and do the nonlinear analysis also and P delta analysis also. So high-rise structures, as I said, we have done some of the analysis for 40-story for comparison of different systems, how it performs. I'll be sharing that results of the comparison as we move forward. So here, this is the plate element used as a infill shear wall, and this is the 3D rendering of it, and we have the maximum shear observed in the columns to 620 kilonewtons here, shear at the base of the column, and this is the stress diagram of the plate elements, and this is another plate element type of shear wall. In fact, modeling of the shear wall is very tricky actually. Plate element is primarily a flexural element, you know, and a bending element actually. But in plane shear, we have to use plane stress element actually. But we can also idealize this shear wall using the deep columns. In fact, that gives more accurate result. We model the beam and the column as a shear wall, and beams we give zero zero unit weight for the beams material, and the columns that gives more accurate results for a high-rise structural analysis actually. So this is the moments at the base of the building. By using that model, we have got 2,780 kilonewton meter in the column. That is shear wall idealized as a column. And moments at the base, again, this is another plate element as the shear wall. So we have used column as a beam element, but deep beam, This is the results of that high-rise structure. And axial forces, you can see there is a huge difference between end columns here and end columns here because of the tension compression thing. So this is the huge compression, and because of the tension, the compressive force is reduced almost half here. So this is the mode shape 1 for this 40-story building, and this is the mode shape 2, and this is the mode shape 3. Of course, these are all exaggerated with the scaled factors of increased factors. And this is the mode shape 3 in different direction. And the variation in axial force for different types of shear. If you use beam column, this is the axial force actually. And if you use the plate element, why I'm trying to tell you is, I've seen many people designing or analyzing. Many engineers tell me that they will use the plate element. So if you use plate element, you will end up getting the lesser axial force. That's what I'm trying to tell, because most of you will be even reviewing the designs. So it's very important to consider this. If you model the same structure as an equivalent braced, it will almost give. So either you have to model it as an equivalent braced frame, or model it as a column beam, as I explained, deep column. Please never use plate element for modeling the shear wall. So please note this. This is important point I wanted to share with you. So movement, that means if you see the movement in the, it is written as movement, it is movement. It is wrong actually. So mu max in plate element, because it becomes stiffer than actual, you will get a higher movement. This is not, it is always good to reduce the movement and have the realistic axial force. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Because plate element is primarily a bending element, it gives you higher moments in the plate. Whereas beam column gives you more realistic, and the difference is not much compared to axial force difference, Here axial force difference, if you see, it is almost like 12%. And here, if you see the difference, it is not even 5%, approximately 5% difference. So it is always good to go for beam column model, even if it is a shear wall. It gives you more realistic pictures. And the shear force also is lesser by about 8% difference in the shear force. So it is always good to design for higher axial load. That's what I'm saying. That the stability of the structure can be ensured by this being closer to reality and robustness of the structure. And testing and acceptance. So base isolation, this is a model of flat slab with column with the base isolation, because 16700 gives a statement saying that you cannot use flat slabs in earthquake, but at the same time it says the engineer in charge can take a decision. So by using this kind of tests, we can always come to a conclusion whether we can adopt the flat slabs in a particular earthquake zone or not, even in high-rise building. So this is the base isolation and construction phase of high-rise buildings. This is another most important thing. Whenever we design high-rise building, we should not design in isolation. We have to consider the buildability of the high-rise building. It's a very important thing. So we have to consider various construction methods that are available for high-rise structures, because without being able to construct effectively with the quality assurance, there is no point in efficient structural systems. So during construction, access for firefighting equipment vehicles. So this is even during construction, the safety, fire safety is very important. And materials for construction shall be placed within 3 meters of hydrant, static access to upper floors during construction, and free access to temporary, permanent and portable first and firefighting systems. And time management, because high-rise buildings, normally 3 to 4 years should be the time considered for construction of this high-rise building. So any construction method, any technology that we adopt, any structural system that we design should be able to be completed within the time frame. So that is a very important aspect considering this. So quality management, this is very, very important in terms of, because of the safety of the people is involved, the quality assurance has to be 100%, almost like zero tolerance. So the system shall cover review of existing requirements, subcontracting of the materials process and controls during process. And the building information modeling, it will help very well, particularly because there are so many disciplines in high-rise construction. In addition to normal disciplines, we also have the structural monitoring and monitoring of the people, safety monitoring, surveillance of the structure. All this we have to incorporate in the thing. So BIM will help a lot in design. And construction management, labor, concrete, structural steel, erection, high-rise management experience is very important, and the purchase and management staffing. So construction planning of high-rise building, it should be done very effectively considering all the risk factors during construction. And technologies to construct high-rise building, we have this steel, one of the most efficient thing apart from our concrete. When we use the concrete, the formwork systems are very important, and auto climbing formwork, rebar prefabrication, high performance concrete, very important for providing high strength and high durability and high modulus, and also pumping arrangements for the concrete. Advanced concrete pumping technology and a simple drop head, because to reduce the cycle time. The biggest thing in high-rise construction is the creep correction. Creep is going to play a big role, and if you don't do the creep correction during construction by considering the construction loads and analysis for creep correction, it's very important. So this is the auto climbing formwork, even Dovka kind of formwork we have to design with the auto climbing system, and platforms are very important with the safety rail. Rebar prefabrication also is very important, because you cannot expect people to tie at the height of 100 meters, 200 meters, and also rebar fabrication is very important. So we always have these pre-tied rebars. And the concrete pump, very high capacity pumps, for Burj Khalifa, Germans have designed special concrete pumps to pump up to 500 meters. And a simple drop head system formwork, that is to reduce the cycle time. We can strip in 24 hours and keep the prop in position. So for that, this drop head system works very well. That means the prop will be in direct contact with the slab, but the form can be stripped from the slab. So this is the drop head system, how you can remove the panel. Actually, you can strip the panel. And the process of selecting right equipment to delivery of the materials, hoists or elevators, these are all very important. Tower cranes and the movement of the tower crane along with the structure, and tower main hoist and concrete pumping requirements. So these are all the important elements in the construction of high-rise buildings. And the hoist for passenger hoist and material hoist, multi-purpose material hoist also will be required. And construction methods, innovation and modern methods of construction are very important for concrete used in, and we also can use precast flat panel systems. In fact, I conceptualized one 50-story building for one of the clients where we have used the super column, that is a steel column with a concrete infill, and then central core with the climbing formwork, and then precast hollow core with the steel girders. So this is the diaphragm action, and outer frame is with super columns. It worked out to be very efficient and effective. So this is the precast flat panel systems which can be used even in high rise, and 3D volumetric construction, that is modular construction. When we have these shear cores, we can use the 3D modular core, and then it can be connected at every floor level through diaphragm. So it will have a very good effect and faster construction because it is easy to build such a modular construction. Tunnel form. This is, of course, we use it in residential projects or hotel projects, very efficient, but safety risk factors have to be considered while considering this tunnel form. It's basically shear wall construction. So this is the tunnel form. You can achieve literally the cycle time of 3 days with this tunnel form. And flat slab systems, but particularly for the office building, we use this flat slab systems for larger spans up to 11 meters, 13 meters, combined with post tensioning. It becomes very efficient and effective. Hybrid constructions, that means a combination of concrete and steel, composite construction also. So we have these flat slab panels, hollow core panels, and we have the steel girders, and we have the concrete core, and we have the steel super frame with composite column. So it's a combination of steel, concrete composite, precast, and central core concrete with the climbing form. That gives the best as of now in our country. It is very practical to construct using these methods. And the pre-stress concrete is very important for high-rise because of the congestion in the reinforcement. We have to adopt this pre-stressing techniques also in and post-tensioning techniques. So fire resistance, this is very important. We should not follow the same just 2-hour fire rating for the concrete or steel. So we have to go for exterior bearing walls, 3 to 4 hours of fire rating, and interior bearing walls, 2 to 4 hours of fire rating, and columns should have 2 to 4 hours, minimum 4 hours, and beams, girders, trusses and arches 4 hours. Floors can be up to 3 hours, and roof can be 1.5 to 2 hours. So these are the different fire ratings in high-rise structures. So fire safety is very essential. One should not design any structure without considering this fire safety. So now we have come to the important aspect, though I quickly run on this. Comparative study we have done for a 40-story structure with different structural systems. So this is a framed structure, simple column and beam system with a diaphragm action of the slab, and here we can see the 2 shear walls in one direction. So we normally provide shear walls in the critical direction. Of course, here I have taken a square shape, but still we have done the wind for this direction only. And this is a tubed frame. You can see the outer shear wall, and this is a tube in tube, like we have the shear walls in the outer and also inner core shear walls. This is a tube in tube, and then bundle tube. So you can see there are 9 tubes here. So this is another system we have considered, and this is a buttressed core similar to Burj Khalifa. We have this central core, and we have this buttress, I-shaped buttress. This so these are all the concepts we have done the study. You can see for all these cases we have extracted the deformation and shear, bending, we have compared actually. So this is the deflected shape for just dead load and live load. You can see it's a column beam structure, and this is the shear wall structure, and you can see the model with shear wall inside here. And this is the shear wall structure. The forces, the shear forces, shear in x direction and shear in y direction, these are plotted here, contours. And movement in the wall, this is the movements in the shear wall. As I said, movement in the shear wall will be lesser compared to modeling using the columns because of the element nature. 12% is the variation as we have studied. And deflected shape in the shear wall structure. And this is a tubed frame. So outer tube stiffened and inner columns are normal to carry the vertical loads primarily. Once you stiffen the outer frame, automatically your forces in the inner frame will be reduced or lesser. So this is the shear force in the tubed frame, outer frame. You can see the shear lag in the corners mainly. And this is the moment in the tubed frame with a deflected shape. And this is the tubed frame structure deformation. So we always model it with the hinge at the base when we go for this high-rise structure. And this is a tube in tube. You can see the inner core tube here and the outer core tube here. And this is the shear in the tube in tube system. You can see the reduced shear. I'll show you the tabulation at the end. And this is the movement in the wall in a tube in tube system. And this is the deformation of a tube in tube. Next is the bundled tube. Here you can see these are all the tubes. Of course, we have not done the staggering of this tube. And this is the shear in the bundled tube. In fact, you can see there is a lot of reduction in the bundled tube, the shear force, you know. And the moment in the bundled tube also. And this is the deformation in the bundled tube. And this is the buttressed core. This is outer, we are reduced the shear. Depending on the need, we decide these structural systems. So in a residential case, this buttressed core is very effective actually. That's what I'm trying to tell you. We have done a real project with the buttressed core. So buttressed core with the shear in the wall. This is the diagram. And movement in the walls, the stiff walls only, we have plotted the stress contours for the shear movement. And this is the buttressed core deformed shape. So finally, these are the results comparison for the various structural systems. So we have this buttressed core is giving you the maximum axial force. So design for axial force is very effective and more reliable actually. That is why I always say that the buttressed core becomes effective and more efficient actually, because you reduce the moment, you and rely on shear and axial force. They are more reliable actually than behavior in flexure or torsion always. So in the buttressed core you get more axial force and shear and lesser movements. You can see the moment plotting here. I have taken the what you call symmetric shape. That's why you are getting the same moment. And these are all the maximum forces I have plotted. Bundled tube becomes very effective in terms of lesser forces and lesser resistance, but we have the more material used in bundled tube. So when we talk about the effectiveness of these structural systems, we have to also compare the material used per square feet, whether it is concrete or steel. And we found that buttressed core gives you the least consumption of the materials, because any material, concrete particularly, it is very effective in axial force and shear. So that's why you increase the axial force and shear and try to minimize the movements and torsion. So, but in tube, you have the maximum moment, you can see, and the shear wall also you get the maximum moment. Here you can see. So the tubed frame will reduce the axial force drastically, but the deformation will be higher for a tubed frame. And this is the beam column, least resistance, high deformation. So we have to consider all these factors in high-rise construction, particularly the story drift and deformation are very important to be considered. So these are some of the examples we have done. I will share my experience in the design of high-rise buildings. Some people are asking, what is the highest building you have designed? We have designed up to 30 floors, highest building in Hyderabad, which is about 100 meters tall. So, and in towers I have already shared. I have designed up to 213 meters is the tallest tower I have designed as a structural engineer. So I am sharing here the buildings. The constructed floors are 2 cellars, stilt, and 24 floors in this building. And this is a buttressed core. Even before I knew about Burj Khalifa, I didn't know this word, to tell you frankly, that it is a buttressed core, but I have conceptualized the structure like this and we have completed. And I always tell many people this is the most efficient structure in Hyderabad, I can say, because the steel consumption in this structure per square feet of slab area is 3.4 kgs only. Very economical thing we have done, and we have used this thing. The advantage I got in this is I have decided this structural system, and planners have done the planning around my structural system. In any high-rise structure, this has to be the process. The structural engineer should be deciding the structural system, and then plan should be done around it. So this is the plan of the building. You can see these are the 2 flats, and we have a shear wall here. And we have a shear wall here, shear wall here, and shear wall here. And here we have the core, central core. And for the central core, we have these beams. These beams we have given even for smaller span, very deep beams, because we wanted that buttress effect for the shear wall to take the to connect with this central core, and that has worked very efficiently. And that's how we could complete the structure. And it is now, actually this was the structure, tallest structure when we took the permission in Hyderabad. The first 25-story building above ground, actually. So this is the photograph of the building. These are twin towers, actually designed for, both are designed for 26 stories. You can see the facade also is taken such that the wind forces are reduced. We have changed this, and this is the fire escape staircase outside, and this is a standing tall structure in Hyderabad we have designed. And this is another project under construction which we have designed very economically, actually less than 3 kgs per square feet, 2 cellars, stilt, and 15 floors with a rigid monolithic construction, designed as a tube type shear wall structure, and stilt floor area is 2000 square meters. Earthquake and wind both are considered. So isolated footings are the foundation systems. Here you can see we have taken the shear wall down, and we designed the parking within these shear walls. So the planning of this structure also is done with the structural system frozen first. So this is the parking plan, and these are the floor plans, and it is under construction, and this is the total project conceived. And now another project, this is lesser floors actually, 1 cellar, stilt, and 10 floors. This is the Pranam, which is a column beam system, and this is also completed construction, and these are all the structural plans, and this is the photograph of that building. And another commercial building, GVK, and we also did office buildings up to 15 floors with the flat slab and column and shear core. And this is the GVK 1, which we won. We were appointed based on the concept of design. So these are all the various structural elements in this building, and these are the photographs during construction. Probably this is the largest first post-tensioned building in Hyderabad in 2004. When we conducted a conference, most of the engineers, structural engineers from across the country visited this site to study the post-tension system. I did the buildability and the comparison before conceptualizing this structure. How many trucks of steel and concrete can be reduced by using post-tensioning those days, to convince the client for adopting post-tensioning. So almost 20 years we have been using post-tensioning in the slabs, and this is the facade construction, and this is the final completed construction. So these are the projects and experiences I had with high-rise structures. So it's very interesting and thrilling to study, plan and design high-rise structures, and it's a great opportunity for any structural engineer to involve in high-rise structures or large span structures. And fortunately, I had reasonable opportunities in designing this. Yeah, so if you have any questions, I request the moderator to take questions from the chat box, and we have 20 minutes time to take the questions. Yeah. Mm. 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 Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 Thank you. Yeah, please. Yeah, as I have shown in some of the previous slides, the main parameters are surrounding structures and fetch area. Whatever fetch area we have to take that fetch distance, and for that fetch distance we have to collect the data of all the structures and model in the direction of the wind, which is critical to the shape of the structure. Number one. Number two, surrounding structures. Number two is so that we have to model all the surrounding structures to reflect the realistic distribution and force coefficients for the structure. Number one. Number two is facade modeling. In fact, facade wind tunnel studies we have to do separately. After doing the main wind tunnel study for the main structure, we have to go for facade wind tunnel test, and we will be getting the more realistic forces in the wind tunnel studies to modify whichever gives higher theoretical and these wind tunnel studies we have to consider for the design. And RWDI is the pioneer in these wind tunnel studies, and we have in Trivandrum smaller wind tunnel company RWDI. And if we have a very important large structures, we should go to Canada, where Davenport, pioneer in wind tunnel studies, 1970s. I also had the opportunity to meet Davenport. So he was heading that wind tunnel studies. In fact, all our IS 875 codal provisions are adopted from the studies of Davenport, actually, whether it is concept of gust factor, force coefficients, and all that. I hope I answered. Oh, yeah, that's a good question actually. In fact, we have seen the foundation, the component of foundation cost, we have designed in Amravati actually, where very challenging. Vijayawada is the most challenging place for designing foundations, because you have the water table as well as the black cotton soil. And their erstwhile government has taken up a 50-storied building. I had the opportunity to study that feasibility analysis of that structure. Even for 8-storied building, we had to go for 34-meter deep piles of 2-meter diameter. So you can imagine how uneconomical it will be. And the foundation cost increase per square feet of construction was 100 rupees per square feet. That means it's very high. Normally, the foundation cost component in construction is about 50 rupees. And when you have black cotton soils, even for 8-storied, 10-storied building, the foundation cost increase is by 100 rupees. The same percentage, like it is about 5 to 10% increase due to black cotton soils. So it is better to restrict up to maximum 10 floors. That's what I advise when you have the black cotton soils. Yeah. Moment curvature and moment moment I got the question. I mean, I'm not able to correlate between this moment curvature and moment rotation. Actually, now I'll come to this. Actually, in a encased column, we have a moment is primarily resisted by the box steel section. In fact, when I have designed encased columns, we have taken the steel column section for construction loads completely. We have to design the section, which is not very critical actually. But when it comes to wind and earthquake, the moment design is using the steel, and the shear is taken by complete concrete. So moment curvature, moment rotation. So which moment rotation? Is it the whole building, or is the moment rotation of the element you are talking about? Yeah, that's what, little bit of so I can clearly say that the moment resistance is primarily by steel, that is flexure and compression, and the concrete takes the complete shear. That's how we design. I will reply to this question after I check it, because it's a bit involving. I will again refer and then reply to this. It requires some time for answering that question. You can send me that question, or whoever Ravi has asked, he can send this question to my mail ID or WhatsApp numbers. I'll reply. And also I replied to you through Kalyan Rama. Yeah. 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 Yeah, IS code itself says, see, 16700 is the code that governs these high-rise structures up to 250 meters tall. So the guidelines given in 16700 can be followed up to 250 meter tall. But the code itself says the engineer in charge can take the decisions by doing the necessary tests, model studies, and loads idealization. So it's not that exactly we have to follow the code only. In fact, as per 16700, it doesn't allow actually. Strictly speaking, if you just want to follow the code, it doesn't allow the sudden change in the stiffness. But if we are bound to incorporate that, there will be huge torsional forces. By doing the dynamic analysis and secondary effects, we have to consider and design the structure for those variation in the stiffness. That's what the code says. Length. Yeah, that's a good point actually. In steel, we have a maximum length of 12 meters. That is transportable. That is from the transportation. Depending on the location of the site, the road width and all that govern the length actually. If you have the highways access to the site, then you can go for 12 meters maximum. And if it is not highway access, if your road widths are 30 feet, 40 feet kind of roads, your maximum length is 6.5 meters, prefabricated length. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Okay.